They say it's just flour, water, and yeast. But is that really true? Today, the bread that arrives on your table comes packaged, sliced, with an extended shelf life and a label full of names that are hard to pronounce. It's practical, affordable, and almost always the same. But have you ever stopped to think about what's behind this seemingly simple process? Could it be that the bread we eat every day still carries the essence of what, for millennia, was considered sacred? On this journey, we go beyond the supermarket shelves. We'll cross the doors of a silent and efficient industry, where the smell of freshly baked bread hides a complex system often invisible to the consumer's eyes. A system that transformed an ancient practice, full of symbolism, culture, and spirituality, into a timed, automated, standardized production line. What was lost along the way? And, perhaps more importantly, what was added? Before the age of machines, before chemical formulas and preservatives, making bread was a ritual. It wasn't just a matter of mixing ingredients. It required time, patience, and a kind of knowledge that couldn't be found in technical manuals, but rather in the watchful eye of a grandmother, in the touch of an ancestral baker's calloused hands, in the smoke that rose from the clay oven in the early hours of the morning. It was a living, pulsating alchemy, passed down from generation to generation. But today, this tradition is in danger of disappearing, or worse, of being forgotten. Replaced by batch numbers, oven temperatures controlled by sensors, and fermentations accelerated by artificial enzymes. It's no exaggeration to say that something essential has been silenced amid the noise of automated conveyor belts and industrial motors. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to rediscover what was left behind. What would happen if we could go back in time? If we deactivated for a moment all the technological apparatus and watched the bread rise as it did in the villages of the past between wood, clay, fire, and silence? What would we discover by comparing the flavor, texture, and symbolic value of artisanal bread with that of an industrialized product, molded to last longer and cost less? This video is not just about bread. It is about memory, about the flavor of things made with purpose, about a food that has survived empires, wars, and revolutions, and that today, almost imperceptibly, reflects much more about who we are than we imagine. What if I told you that understanding how bread was made before the Industrial Revolution could completely change the way you see the food you put on your table? With every bite of modern bread, there is a story that is not being told, a story that begins long before additives, colorful packages, and mass production. A story where bread was more than food. It was life, it was time, it was faith. And it is this story that we are going to begin to reveal now. But be careful. Not everything we are going to discover will be comfortable. There are secrets hidden beneath the layers of modernity. There are hidden processes behind the golden and crunchy appearance. And there is a past that insists on being remembered, not only because of tradition, but because perhaps, just perhaps, it is there that the true flavor of bread still resides. The history of bread has been almost inseparably linked to the evolutionary trajectory of humanity itself. Since the dawn of civilization, when the first human groups began to abandon their nomadic lifestyle and adopt agricultural practices, bread began to emerge as one of the first foods prepared by man. It was during this period, marked by the transition from a way of life based on hunting and gathering to the intentional cultivation of grains, that humanity's food base began to be built. With the domestication of cereals such as wheat, barley, rye, and spelt, new food possibilities began to emerge. These grains, when harvested, dried, and subsequently ground, revealed a previously unknown potential. Rudimentary grinding, initially carried out with smooth stones or abrasive surfaces, made it possible to transform these grains into a coarse powder that, when mixed with water, gave rise to a thick and dense dough. This extremely manual and physical process marked the birth of flour, still far from the refined product we know today. Tools such as stone pestles and hand millstones were the first instruments used for this type of grinding. The oldest archaeological evidence of this practice dates back to around 30,000 years before Christ, which shows how much humanity was already dedicated to developing ways of transforming natural resources into minimally processed foods. This raw dough of flour and water, without fermentation and without any refined cooking technique, was, in its most primitive form, placed on stones heated by fire, resulting in flat, dry, and hard breads. The texture of these first breads was much more reminiscent of the hardness of a thick biscuit than the softness of the breads we find on supermarket shelves today. The lack of fermentation made these foods extremely simple, but their durability and ease of transport made them an excellent option for ancient people. Even so, despite this simplicity, these first breads had value not only in terms of food, but also in terms of social and symbolic value. They were part of domestic rituals, community sharing, and emerging cultural practices, consolidating themselves as an important link between food and the daily lives of early civilizations. However, the great revolution in the way bread was made would happen by chance, like many fundamental discoveries in human history. At some point, someone left a dough to rest for a long time, perhaps forgotten outside, exposed to the air and the environment. In the meantime, microorganisms naturally present in the atmosphere, mainly yeasts and bacteria, initiated an invisible but highly transformative biological process: fermentation. This spontaneous phenomenon, by releasing gases such as carbon dioxide, caused the dough to rise, becoming lighter and more aerated. Thus, natural fermentation was born, accidentally, a process that not only changed the texture of bread, but also its flavor, aroma, and later, its importance in human nutrition. This new type of bread, softer and with increased sensory complexity, began to be valued by several cultures. Ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans developed their own versions and methods, incorporating natural fermentation as an essential element in bread production. For centuries, bread making was an art passed down from generation to generation, almost always carried out at home or in small local bakeries. The ovens made of clay or stone were heated with wood, and the ingredients, flour, water, and salt, came from the land itself, often harvested and processed on the spot. This intimate connection with food was in stark contrast to what we know today as the industrial baking process. Today, bread production is carried out on a large scale, in highly automated factories where robots, sensors, and software control every step of the process, from the selection of ingredients to the final packaging. Natural fermentation has been largely replaced by standardized chemical and biological yeasts, capable of reducing production time from days to a few hours. Specific enzymes, stabilizers, preservatives, and texture improvers are incorporated into the recipe with the aim of making the product more uniform, durable, and adapted to the demands of mass distribution. Flour, which was previously milled by hand and used in its most complete state, now undergoes industrial processes that refine it, remove some of its nutrients, and make it more stable for storage and use in industrial environments. The efficiency of the modern food production system is undeniable. It feeds billions of people every day. But this efficiency comes with a significant loss of the artisanal aspect, symbolic value, and direct connection with the ingredients and natural processes. While modern breads are made on assembly lines with timers adjusted to the millisecond, ancestral breads required time, waiting, and observation. Natural fermentation, for example, could take 12 to 48 hours, depending on the temperature, humidity, and strength of the yeast culture used. Each batch was unique, with small variations that made the bread something alive, unpredictable, almost magical. In today's factories, the goal is precisely the opposite: to eliminate any possibility of variation. Industrialized bread must always be the same, regardless of the day, the season, or the place of production. This standardization, although efficient, also impoverishes the consumer experience. Bread which once carried the aroma of firewood, the flavor of freshly harvested wheat, and the texture built over time, has now become a uniform, plasticized product, with artificially extended expiration dates and ingredients unknown to the average consumer. What is lost in this process is not only flavor, it is also memory, culture, and identity. Looking back and understanding how bread was made in ancient times helps us question the direction of contemporary food production. Is it worth sacrificing time, tradition, and flavor in the name of speed and convenience? Could it be that by automating each step of the process, we are also automating our taste buds and forgetting what bread really tasted like? In the midst of a globalized food system, where a few conglomerates control most of the production, it is essential to reclaim awareness of what we eat, how we eat it, and why we eat it. This reflection leads us not only to the rediscovery of ancient baking techniques, but also to a profound questioning of the current food production model. If bread began as a simple, sacred food deeply connected to the earth, what has it become today? A product lined up on shelves, packaged in plastic and filled with additives? Or is there still the possibility of returning, at least in part, to its origins, artisanal, symbolic, alive? It is within this fine line between past and present